Good morning, everybody. I've got an absolute clanger of a story here. You're not going to believe this. I've only seen a little bit of a highlight into it. Absolutely blew my socks off. And, well, opened my phone straight away so I could get on with reading and recording it with you. Um, this is a shocker. Obviously, we've seen what's happened in Ireland lately, haven't we? With referring to people who were concerned about murderers attacking school kids being called far right. And they were obviously lambasted as being far worse because burning buses down is obviously far worse than trying to murder school children, isn't it? That is clearly the worst crime according to Ireland, anyway. But this is I'll get on with this anyway. This is in Mail Online. I'll put the link below as always. Um, Teacher jailed indefinitely for refusing to call a boy a girl. Enoch Burke, who wouldn't use trans pupils' pronouns, won't be released until he stays away from his old school and the country is behind him. Enoch Burke flouted a court order to stay away from school following suspension. Now, he should have done that. I'm going to say that's a bit silly. I don't know what the ins and outs of it are with that, so we'll be discovering this together. But that would be a bit silly if you have been ordered to stay away. However, I do agree with him for standing by his principles on if somebody wants you to call them they and them or whatever rubbish or z or zer and you refuse, absolutely stand by them principles. It's the trans right row that has gripped Ireland for well over a year, putting an otherwise unremarkable history teacher at the heart of the country's culture wars for his refusal to use trans pupils' pronouns. Well, if he's a history teacher, he's probably fully aware of the consequences of compelled speech and where that ends up going, a la the Soviet Union and their compelled speech laws. Enoch Burke, who taught history, refused to refer to transitioning transgender student as they rather than he in May last year. Good lad. It sparked a chain of events that led to him being jailed for repeatedly showing up at Wilson's Hospital School in County Westmeath after being sacked and entering a staff room saying he was there to do his job. I get it. I fully understand his logic. He obviously feels very aggrieved and that he shouldn't have been sacked and that he's done nothing wrong. So he's obviously doing this as like a political protest. But you're going to be antagonising the state, and as an individual, you can't beat the state. It's not like in the 1800s, like with Billy the Kid or something. Those days are well behind us. But I suppose on the other hand, if he hadn't have done that, he wouldn't have got arrested, and this may not have got the highlighting that it's got now, and we wouldn't be sat here listening to this or reading this together, would we? He now remains in Dublin's Mountjoy prison with no prospect of release because he refuses to comply with a court order to stay away from the school premises. Meanwhile, Burke's loyal family continue to protest at the school, maintaining he's being persecuted for his Christian beliefs, while supporters insist the whole country is behind him. Well, that is true, and it's not just his Christian beliefs, it's his actual human beliefs. You don't need to be a Christian. I mean, I am a Christian myself. Well, you don't need to be a Christian to say, no, a man can't become a woman and a woman can't become a man. In the same way that a banana isn't an orange. It doesn't matter, even if you colour it in orange, it's still a banana. It always will be a banana. And unfortunately, it's the prevalence of narcissism in our current society that's allowing this madness to escalate to where it's getting to now, where people are literally being sent to prison and losing their jobs for speaking the truth. It's crazy. However, other less sympathetic to his cause view his stubborn refusal and his family's protest as attention-seeking, with one newspaper columnist pointing out that the Burkes like to get their own way. Well, this is what I've said in other videos about what the left are exceptionally good at, which is friend-enemy distinction. Now, this man is a white Celtic Christian. He's indigenous to Ireland, and people on the left, obviously for their cause, he isn't useful. So it's more useful for them to side with the transgender lobby. So in the friend-enemy distinction, they will side with the transgender lobby. Now, if this teacher had been, I don't know, a Hindu from India, with a name like Patel or something, possibly a woman with a leg missing or an eye patch. I doubt very much that the newspapers would be going against it. In fact, I think they'd be harping on about how this would be some form of racism and other and discriminatory against a minority, and that the transgender people are abhorrent for trying to force somebody to go against their religious principles taught to them, which is such a rich and diverse part of their culture. That's obviously my opinion. I do believe that would be the actual result of that, though. The row broke out more than a year ago when, during a meeting with the head teacher and his deputy, Burke said that his evangelical Christian beliefs meant he opposed transgender. It's not even evangelical Christian beliefs, it's just like normal human beliefs. You know, it's like common sense human beliefs that, you know, a man is a man and a woman is a woman. You know, it's just because you get your meat and two veg chopped up and turned into something that it's not doesn't mean you are that other thing. At the end of the day, you've still got your meat and two veg. It's just been horribly mutilated and reshaped into something that it's not. It hasn't suddenly become, you know, the what did they call it? You know, there was a bonus hole. I think a university or a hospital was on about calling vaginas a bonus hole. I mean, they're idiots. I couldn't believe it when that happened. Bonus hole, idiots. Following this, Burke publicly criticised the head teacher's demand that staff use students' chosen pronouns. No, because the students are there to learn, they're not there to dictate. You know, the children need to be led, they're not the leaders. Following a service at the Church of Ireland School to celebrate its 260th anniversary. Imagine going back in a time machine 250 years ago, 10 years after that school had been founded, and explaining to him then what was going to happen in 250 years' time, even 100 years ago. Go back 100 years ago to that school, you know, and you explain to them, yeah, in 100 years' time, there's going to be kids here who are boys, but they're going to say that they're girls, and you've got to call them they, them. They'd probably drag you into the street and lynch you as being like possessed by Satan or something like that. You know, they actually wouldn't be able to grasp out the madness of it. That is how far our society's gone. Burke was accused of breaching the confidence of the transitioning student. No, he wasn't. He was actually doing him a service and helping him to get through a confusing time of his adolescence. Incredibly confusing times. So you've got confusing time of life of an adolescent person going through incredibly confused times in society. That history teacher was doing that child an excellent service. And as a result, the teacher was suspended with pay and later fired for gross misconduct in August last year. However, Burke continued showing up at the school, prompting his former employer to obtain a court order to get him to stay away. In September last year, Burke was jailed for 100 days for ignoring the court order. During an appeal, the teacher argued that he was being imprisoned because of his Christian beliefs. I agree with that as well. I do agree that is why he's in prison, and I believe that's why he's lost his job. It is discrimination, that. After being released, Burke was imprisoned for the second time in September this year for refusing to stay away from the school again, and has been told that he will remain in prison indefinitely until he agrees to comply with the court order. Indefinitely. Yeah, that is crazy, isn't it? Like, that guy, that Algerian who just recently stabbed up all those kids, he'll be out in prison at some point. Like, he knows that he's got a date at the very latest when he will be out of prison. Yet this man, simply for standing on his principles, could spend the rest of his life, in theory, in prison. That is madness, isn't it? That is literally the insanity of our world. Here, female delves in. I think female's the part of the males thing where they have women reporters reporting on women's things. Here, female delves into the case that has gripped Ireland as Burke's family campaigns for his release without having to endorse transgenderism. Well, it's just insane. Last spring, head teacher Naya McShane, sorry if I butchered that name by the way, sent an email to her staff informing them that the student's new name and pronouns. Oh, look at that, female head teacher. As I've said in other videos about a lot of these problems, they're always, and I'm not saying it's all women, but there does seem to be a link between highly educated women with particular ideologies getting into positions of influence and creating a lot of these problems that we're seeing. Now, once again, I'm not saying all women. And I'm not saying I could be a head teacher myself either. Not at all. I have not got the acumen for it, and I'm fully aware of that. But we've got to a point where we're allowing people into jobs simply because they tick a box and promote a particular political ideology, the flavour. I mean, I suppose a lot of the problem as well is I think it's something like 3/4 of all teachers are female now. You know, we get told about how important representation is and seeing people like you. No wonder we've got such I mean, going off topic a bit, but like we see all this gang violence in London or in our inner cities. How many of those gang members come from single mother households with no contact with the fathers, and who live on streets where there's almost no men because most of the men are in prison, and then they go into school and all they've got is women teaching them, and then a woman head teacher who's got radical ideological beliefs like a boy can become a girl. It's very, very. I do think it's very dangerous. What's happening in our education system? You know, these are formative years of children, and I can't remember who it was who said it, but show me the boy at 7, and I'll show you the man at 30. You know, so these teachers are fully aware that once you get certain ideas distilled into children at a certain age, it's almost impossible to get it out of them. You know, it's a form of indoctrination. It's very, very dangerous in my opinion. Very dangerous. And they're ending up with a type of groupthink and overly feminising boys rather than teaching them how. Because boys have got testosterone and a lot of it, and boys are naturally aggressive. You know, look at any male mammal; they all fight. Fighting for boys is as natural as breathing and drinking water. You know, it's just part of the male experience of life. For its good and its bad, however you want to discuss it. There's no point trying to rationalise it. It's one of those things that just is, like dogs bark, cats meow and scratch. It's just what happens. And overly feminising boys isn't teaching them how to actually control and cope with those impulses and emotions of aggression and violence and wanting to fight. The best thing to do is to teach them how to harness it and control it properly. Doing things like boxing, playing rugby, wrestling, you know, debating, all these sorts of things. It's incredibly important, and they're not getting that because, unfortunately, we have too many female teachers who project their own femininity and their own lived experience and view of the world. It's like you see in psychology as well. And I'm somebody who has received psychological treatment, and it's useless because it's all sitting down and talking. It's very feminine focused, incredibly feminine focused. And for most men, men need to do things. What works best for men for therapy is not face to face. That's what women like to do. It's shoulder to shoulder. So you might be, I don't know, building a bench, but while you're doing that activity or lifting weights together or anything, but whilst you're doing that activity, you then start to discuss things. Men need a different way of doing things, and it's the same with boys. We're learning. You know, and I'm not saying this is with all people and all dogs, but you know, I've lost count how many women I've known who've had problems with male dogs. And like, but he's fine with men because males respond differently to other males, and it's the same with male boys. Adolescent boys, they respond differently to male teachers than they do to female teachers, especially problem lads. It's just the way it is. Boys respond better to strength. Anyway, I mean, I've gone right off on a tangent there. I'll carry on with this anyway. Well, giving evidence in a later trial, Deputy Head Teacher John Gilligan said that Burke erupted during the meeting and changed colour completely. I'm not surprised he did. I mean, this is a man whose entire reasonable worldview has been turned upside down by sycophantic ideologues, people who have really gone on the, drunk, as the Americans like to say, drunk the Kool-Aid. You know, like it's just university educated people, man. Very dangerous. Very, very, especially when they're not taught how to think properly. You know, they're given the information and the knowledge, but they're not taught how to actually think. It's dangerous. According to the former Deputy Head Burke, whose forte was said to have been extracurricular debating, was said to have been extracurricular debating, spoke for a good 5 to 8 minutes. After this, guidance counsellor Freda Malone told a court that she approached Burke to tell him she was sorry he was so upset and noted that he had tears in his eyes. I'm not surprised. Not only is he losing his job, but he's losing it over what is effectively ideological indoctrination. You know, it's crazy. He's well right to have been upset, and these people are monsters for doing this. In a follow-up meeting between the head teacher, Her deputy and Burke, Mr. Galligan, claimed the jail teacher repeated how he was opposed to transgenderism as a result of his religion. Not even as a result of his religion. It's just like his own sensible framework of how he interprets the world around him. Like, that is not an unreasonable thing to be opposed to. Like, it's like somebody trying to tell you that the sky's not blue. You know, it's like when it clearly is. Somebody trying to tell you that grass is not green. You know, it's gaslighting. He's being gaslit. So I understand his reaction to this. Following this, Burke is said to have publicly interjected after a religious service celebrating the school's 260th anniversary to criticise Miss McShane's supposed demand that staff refer to the students by their chosen pronouns. He's right. He's absolutely right. And every single teacher there who didn't back him up is a coward. An absolute coward. Following the chapel service, well, I mean, that's even more pertinent that he was in the chapel as well. So he's absolutely stood on his principles there, and rightly so. Following the chapel service, Burke is alleged to have approached the head teacher at a meal where he asked her to withdraw her demand again. That's reasonable. As a result of this, the head teacher believed Burke was guilty of gross misconduct. No, the teacher's out of line. As other students may not have been aware the student was transitioning. Miss Freda Malone, well, how could these other teachers not be aware? If that student is demanding that they get called they, them by everybody, it's pretty goddamn obvious that they're transitioning, isn't it? This is the gaslighting that they're engaging in with, you know, this is the weasel word games that HR departments engage in to get rid of undesirables. They start manipulating facts and start twisting things. It's absolutely disgusting. And they should be, that faculty should be jailed for this, for doing that to this man's sanity. Miss Freda Malone, who worked at the school as a guidance counsellor, claims Burke breached the confidence of the student on 2 occasions during that occasion. Well, no, because if they're making everybody call them they, them, like I just said, it's glaringly obvious, isn't it? Like, it's as obvious as 2 + 2 = 4. Speaking at a High Court hearing in March this year, Miss Malone said the head teacher, or said the teacher, was escorted home by other guests at the event, and they later formed a ring around her home out of concern for her safety. Discussing the incident in court, head teacher Miss McShane, who stepped down amid the controversy, said the public statement of his refusal to accept transgenderism in the chapel, it was as if the school had demanded to accept transgenderism, which was not the case. So it was a misrepresentation of. I don't agree with that. I do not agree. I don't agree with that. When you're telling teachers that they have to call people they, them, that is you making them engage in the ideology of acceptance. So you are making them engage in acceptance. When I asked, what I asked is what we could support the student in their request. That is very different to ask the staff to accept transgenderism. No, it's not. No, it's not. If you're making somebody do the motions, then you're making them engage in the ideology. It's as simple as that. In August last year, Miss McShane submitted a Stage 4 report to the chair of the board, John Rogers, about Burke's outburst, which prompted the representative to arrange a meeting with the teacher. How much more have we got of this? There's a lot more going on here, but I think it's just going to be really talking about the same, about continuing. I mean, that's pretty much the meat of it. As I say, I'll put the link below. If you do want to hear more of that story, please go to the article itself and read it. Obviously, it's good for the traffic on their website, and you know, for they'll then get their revenue for the you reading it as well, and you get the rest of the story. So it's a win-win for everybody. If you've found this interesting and informative, please like, subscribe, and put a comment below. Thanks for your time. I'll post another video later.